And David Lipsy, and I'm your full spectrum Gnostic. I have a wonderful show for you today. This is Knowledge from Beyond, and we're going to have a great show today. So, what we're going to do first is, we're going to talk about what our subject matter is today. We're starting Halloween a little bit early. Halloween's not supposed to be until the end of next month. And we're going to do a lot of these scary and semi-scary shows leading going into Halloween. And we're not even into October yet, and we're already getting started because we have a long list of shows I want to talk about. So today, what are we going over? We're going over uh, uh, spontaneous human combustion. This is something that been debated for hundreds of years. A lot of people think this is a myth. This is not real, but this has been documented and recorded ever since 1470 was the first case. And there's still documented cases of this even today. The last documented case of this was uh, in 2010. So this is still going on. A lot of these cases, are there. This is very, very, very controversial. Okay, but it leads to a very serious question and something that scientists and believers and non-believers been debating for a long time. Can the human body actually catch on fire? Okay. This is what a lot of people do not understand. Okay. And we're going to talk about some case studies. And this is some very weird stuff. So uh, let's get into it. So normally I don't go by notes, but this is very deep. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things. So, what is the reason why people believe this is real? Because, for one, can your body actually catch on fire? The problem is that your body is mostly made up of water. And what skeptics always like to talk about is that it's not that you are actually catching on fire, but your clothes is catching on fire. But look at this picture here. See, this is what spontaneous human combustion is. This lady burnt to a crisp. And for a body to be reduced to ashes, the temperature have to be at least 2,000 degrees. And a lot of these weird cases, the whole body is not consumed. As you can see, her foot is not damaged. Her shoe is not damaged. And in a lot of cases, the surrounding furniture around the person is not damaged either. It's just that the person just burned up in this intense fire. And there's even people that have survived this. So we have some weird pictures you're going to be looking at, but also, now, what is some of the causes people believe this is about? There's been different theories that have been put forward. Back in the old days, they just thought it was the wrath of God or evil spirits or the devil or whatever. Today, we don't believe in that stuff. We believe it might have something to do with bacteria, static electricity, obesity, uh, excessive drinking. A lot of these people drunk a lot. Not all of them, but some of them did. Some of it might be caused by medication or 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 just short circuiting of the body. We really don't know. And science, even today, with documented cases, they have not been able to figure this out, and firemen have not been able to figure it out. So let's go into some of the most weird cases about this. Okay. Now, as I said before, just like here, what is weird about these cases, normally when there's a fire, firemen can always point to the point of ignition. It was started by a gas leak, started by a cigarette, started by this or that. In these cases, which baffle firemen, the body catches on fire, and a lot of flammable items around that person does not burn. And how can you have a fire which is strong enough to reduce a human body to ash and it doesn't burn the surrounding materials? This is very, 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 very strange. Okay. So let's talk about some documented cases, and we're going to be seeing some weird pictures and everything, and we might try to figure this out, or we might just scare the hell out of us. But at first, let's go to a case which is what I was talking about. The case on the TV screen right here. Okay. This is a case from 1951. This 67-year-old lady was found burned to death in her home after her landlord realized that she came to, because she tried to contact her and she couldn't contact her. And when she went to the house, the doorknob was very hot. So she notified the police. And when the police entered the body was completely burnt to ash and only her leg remained. And the firemen could not find a source of this. Okay, this is just really strange stuff. Now, did she have a pact with the devil? Did she do somebody wrong? Is there something that she did? Okay. And let's talk about some other weird cases. And we're talking about present day cases. They know of 200 documented cases of spontaneous human combustion, or what is sometimes called SHC. So let's go back to an old case. This case goes back to 1725, where this lady worked in an inn in England, and she was working in the kitchen. And when they came to check on her, there was nothing but ash. And a few of her limbs was there. Pieces of her limbs was there. But she was reduced all the way to ash. And of course, you're going to say, well, maybe it was started by the cooking or something on the stove. But the problem is, in the kitchen, they had wooden utensils, and it was a wooden house. And the house did not burn down. The kitchen did not burn. The wooden utensils was not burned. It was just a pile of ash on the ground. And she burnt to completely. This is awesome. Let's talk about another case. This is a case goes back again to 1700. We're going to go back there. We're going to come present day cases. We're going to just go over different cases. Okay. This lady, the body was found halfway between the bed and the window. Her body was gone. The only thing that was left of her was a lower leg and some fingers. Everything else was burnt to coal. Okay. And she had a candle on a nightstand on either side of the bed. The candles were still burning, and the nightstands wasn't burnt. The bed wasn't burnt. She tried to get up out of bed to open the window. I guess she was hot, and she didn't make it. Maybe she got struck by lightning. Maybe, I don't know. What could possibly do this? This is very, very, very weird. You know, this is going to make it hard for us to sleep today. Look at this case here. Look at this. These are documented modern cases. You see, the furniture did not burn. Only her legs are there. How can that be? In a regular fire, people might say, well, maybe she burnt poor, she was drinking, or her dress caught on fire. But then in most burnt cases, the body is charred on the outside, but the inside isn't charred. For bone and the whole body to be destroyed like that, this is an internal fire. This is some crazy stuff. Let's talk about another case. Super crazy. Um, this case, this is in 1885 in a small town in Illinois. A woman, she always went down at night. She liked it to smoke her pipe at night. And she was found in the morning. She would always go and smoke her pipe at the table near the kitchen. And in the morning, that's all they found of her was her foot and her wooden pipe. She was gone. Nothing but ashes. And in this case, it was very sad because the smoke, when she burnt this, her husband was in the next room over. He died of smoke inhalation. The house did not burn down, but the smoke of her catching on fire, actually, he choked to death and didn't make it out of the fire. Very scary. Here's another story. This one goes back to, let's talk about a modern story. This one is in 1932 in North Carolina. Okay. This lady was in 1932. What was she doing? She was listening to the radio, her and her daughter, and all of a sudden, maybe kids shouldn't be listening to this. Her underwear caught on fire, and her daughter was able to put the fire out, but she had burns down there and on her dress. Maybe she's just that hot. This is really, really bad. And she suffered severe burns. Let's go back some to the past. This is 1744. This case, this is in Toledo, Ohio. Okay. Now, this lady liked it to drink at night. She liked to drink a lot of gin. That's the reason they think some drinking, a lot of these people, not all of them, was heavy drinkers. This lady loved to drink gin at night. And in the morning, half of her body was gone. But I know from personal experience, if you ever drink Everclear or things like that, it just makes you so hot where you're sweating like a pig, like you're burning inside. I guess if you get too hot, you can actually catch on fire. And this is what happened. We're going to skip. This is what happened to a veteran. What year? Where's that veteran story? This was a veteran, which is in 1985. It was a Vietnam veteran. And him and his friend was watching TV, and they was sitting on the couch. And all of a sudden, the guy caught on fire. He started smoking, and he ignited. His friend was able to douse him with water and put the fire out. He suffered first and second degree burns, But you might say, well, maybe he poured something on him, whatever. But his outer clothes was not burnt. His inner clothes was burnt and his skin was burned. And when he was taken to the hospital, they said that the burning was coming from inside of him. Okay. And how can you burn from the inside out? Now, this is why some people believe this might be the cause, is because if you suffer from extreme high blood pressure, or maybe if there's a short circuit, because our body is electrical. Maybe if there's a shortcut in your body, or something goes wrong, or maybe if you suffer from extreme high blood pressure or something like that. Okay. Could that causes people to catch on fire? And that might be what this one case is about. Let's talk about this other case since we're skipping around. This one lady, she was in the back seat of the car. This was in Florida. And this was in Florida. I think this was in 1980 again. She was in the back seat. It was super hot day in Florida, and she kept talking about how hot she is and how hot she is, and rolled down the window and everything. And they was driving with the windows down because she kept complaining about how hot it is. And then she actually ignited. They had an accident. They was trying to stop the car and trying to put her out. She wasn't completely engulfed, but she was from her chest on down. She was on fire. They ended up crashing the car. They was able to pull her out of the car and put the fire out. Again, she suffered second and third degree burns. Okay, but she was okay. And the firemen investigated. They couldn't find a source of ignition. There was no gas leak in the car. She was not in the back seat drinking. Her clothes was not covered in alcohol, or she wasn't wearing flammable clothes. But she was kept talking about how hot she is, and she was burning up and how terribly hot it is. And she kept complaining about the heat. This is very, very strange. Now, if you want to talk about something that's really strange, look at this one right here. This is a person, like back in the 60s, where they died in their bed. The coroner tried to say maybe they were smoking, or maybe this, maybe that, or drink, but there was no cigarettes near the bed. As you can see, the furniture and things was not burnt. The body actually got so hot in all these cases. This is what they call self-cremation. Because normally when a body burns, it only burns the outside of the body. It burns the outside. It doesn't burn and destroy the bone. To destroy bone and teeth, the fire has to be as hot as 2,000 degrees. In this case, the bed and the smoke is what caused people to know there was a fire. But when they got there, the bed was on fire. When they put the fire out, they could see the remains of a person. But everything around the house. And again, there was no point ignition. What would make a human body catch on fire like that? Now, some people, there is a theory that they're talking about something called the wick effect, to where if you have, what diabetes is. The old what the Greeks used to do is to test if you had diabetes or not. That's the reason they used to call it sugar. Is the Greeks would taste your urine. I don't recommend you doing that, but the urine would taste sweet. Okay. And if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, and one thing about diabetes, your body cannot process carbohydrates good. So you start, since your body can't break down carbohydrates, and carbohydrates is broken down into sugar. The same thing with alcohol. Your body tries to break down alcohol. Alcohol is also poisonous to the body too. Your body again processes it and converts it and tries to get it out the other end as quick as possible. Maybe in some of these cases where these people have extreme levels of because there's cases, especially with people having extreme diabetes, where because they're have so much sugar content in their because their body cannot break down uh you know uh the glucose in their blood, the sugar in their blood, they actually will start getting mold and things and fungus growing on them. Okay. Could this be the cause to where, like, for example, if you're just drinking all the time, and this might be one of the things, because not all these cases are caused by people drinking, but several of these people that have went up in flames, over 200 cases, several of these people was known to be extremely heavy drinkers. Okay. But the lady who was sitting in the back of the car, she wasn't a heavy drinker. Maybe her blood pressure was extremely high or something. We don't know. But she was just kept complaining about how terribly hot it was. And this can't be just a thing about alcohol. Because I hope you're sitting down. In 2010, there was a case in India about a baby who caught on fire. Not once, not twice, not three times, four times. And they couldn't figure out, wouldn't engulf his whole body, but one time his hands started smoking, another time there was smoke coming out of his side, and he would start smoking, and then you would see the skin like starts bubbling and thing, and the parents would just dip him and put him in the sink and pour water on him, and he got third and second degree burns. And then they started treating him at the hospital after that with drugs and medication. Here's another case. Look at this. Look at the room. There's no damage to the furniture. Look at this. For this fire to be 2,000 degrees hot, to where the lady totally burnt to ash, she self-cremated. Her shoes are in perfect condition. Look at the end table here. For a fire to get that hot, you would think it would burn the entire house down. Look at the furniture. It's no damage. This is why in the old days they thought this was some kind of supernatural thing. They did not believe this had to do with, a regular cause. They thought this was supernatural. Because even today, with all the science we have, we cannot explain this. How can a person, self cremate? And again, in this case, from the 1950s, the firemen could find no ignition source. Let's say hypothetically she was drinking and smoking. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. If we all know, firemen know what cigarette fires look like. This is not a cigarette fire. This is what I call scary shit. And what science has been trying to do, and skeptics, they've been trying to prove that they can't say it's not real because they actually have the body here. They can test the body and they know the person. They can find out who that legs belong to. But they've been trying to do different tests. Like one of the tests they did several years ago is where they took the carcass of a pig and they doused the pig in alcohol and everything and did everything and almost tried to soak the pig in alcohol. And then they tried to do something by lighting the alcohol on fire. And it burned, but again, it burnt it burnt the outside. The pig was cooked from the inside out, not from the outside in. And with those experiments they have tried, is not going to get rid of the bone because that fire is not going to be 2000 degrees. They also did another experiment where they took like a blanket and soaked it full of gasoline or something super flammable and wrapped it around a carcass and tried to catch that on fire. Again, it is cooked from the outside in, but it doesn't affect the bone. Science have yet to explain in any of these cases how can a body be reduced to coal. It takes the heat of a crematorium to get that hot. And you would think if something that hot was in this room, how come it didn't affect the rest of the furniture? Do you believe this is something to do with the supernatural? Do you believe that? Maybe we can blame it on aliens. Maybe we can blame it on the devil. Okay. Halloween's coming. Maybe we can blame it on the Great Pumpkin. I don't know what to do. But this is some weird, very weird, extremely weird stuff. Let's talk about another case. This is another case of a person who survived. This is a case of a guy that was driving to work back in the 70s. And he was going to work and he was very hot and he was in a rush to go to work and he was in his car and he didn't have air conditioning and he was sitting in the car and all of a sudden he started seeing smoke and he was thinking that maybe his car, something was wrong. Maybe it was gasoline leak or maybe it was an oil leak or maybe because he started seeing smoke. And when he got to the light and he pulled over to the side of the road, he got out of the car, but he was the one who was smoking. And he pulled off his clothes and was pouring water all over him and everything. And he was able to put the, he did not totally go up, but he was smoking. Okay. And he did have some burns on his arms and on his torso. But how could that happen? And since you might say also that maybe these people was on a certain type of medication and this and that, but remember, this has been documented ever since the 1470s. They didn't have medication back in the 1470s. Some of these cases are 1700. Some of them are 2010. Some of them are 1980. They're all over the place. And we only know about the few cases that have been documented. We don't know how widespread this is. Here's another case. A lot of these happen in bed, where a person will ignite in bed and there's a fire. And when the firemen come to put out the fire, they discover after putting out the fire, there's the remains of a person there. What is left of the person, and normally it's always the same thing. It's an arm that survived, a foot that survived, a leg that survived. The rest of the body doesn't make it. And it burns completely. And as you can see here, you would think as a fire that big, it would destroy the entire room. This is one of the hallmarks of spontaneous human combustion. The surrounding materials do not catch fire. This is some very weird stuff. Now, who wants to run some experiments tonight? We could do some experimentation. You could drink like 20 shots of tequila and go to bed and turn the heat on and see what happens. I wouldn't recommend that. But as I said, I don't think most of these cases do with alcohol. Some of them does. But a lot of these cases had nothing to do with alcohol. And you definitely can't say the baby that was having this problem couldn't have had the drinking problem. The guy, the business guy who in a suit that was going to work and was smoking, he wasn't drinking. He might have been drinking the night before, but he wasn't drinking that morning. Let's talk about some more cases. If anyone have any explanation of what this could be, but this is some very, very, very weird stuff. Okay. Here's another case. This one is about a couple. It was late at night and they were sitting together, and all of a sudden the lady's caught on fire. And they tore the lady's dress off, and they got water, and they was able to put out the fire. And they was thinking that maybe it was an electrical fire or something like that. And they investigated. They couldn't find nothing. And they was sitting together on the couch. And all of a sudden, the lady's caught on fire. And there was no electrical fire. There was no this or that. And they was able to put the fire out. There is so much we don't know. This is why people don't like to talk about stuff like this. Because, I try to be the person who knows a lot of things. About this, I know nothing. This is just totally strange, totally weird. Okay. Let's talk about some more cases. Okay. We're going to fast forward the film a little bit. Go to the next picture. The body is totally gone. The legs are still there. The bird cage is not burned. Her upper body is totally destroyed. And I hate to say this, people are going to get mad. Around 70 to 80% of these cases deal with women. Why? I do not know. And again, in this fire, they could not find an ignition source. And you would think for her to be, the fire to get so hot where her body is just totally destroyed. Look at her legs. They're not even burnt at all. And look at the bird cage. The one we had at the beginning of this one, where the lady's hands are on fire. That one, let me go back and show you that one real quick. That one I showed first for those who didn't see it. This is true of a lady who was in the hospital and her hands caught on fire. And the fire alarm went off and they put her hands out. Maybe you could say, well, maybe the lotion, she had some kind of oil or something on it or what. But again, she suffered burns, severe burns to her hands. But the rest of her body did not catch fire. It's just her hands caught fire. This is some very weird stuff. Very, very, very weird. Very weird. Let me see. Where were we at in our film? We saw this one. And then we'll go up a little bit more. We talked about this one. Oh, we talked about this one. Let's go to the next picture. This is a true story. This is a guy in Serbia in 2018. He got drunk at a bar. He went in the alley to lay down and he fell asleep. And people saw something burning in the alley and they went over there and the guy was asleep and he was on fire. So of course he spilled alcohol on him. They doused the fire. They went and put the fire out and whatever. And his outer clothes was not that burnt. His stomach was on fire, but his stomach was burnt severely. The flesh was burnt. His clothing was not that burnt. And when they examined him at the hospital, they said the fire was coming from inside. Maybe he drank that much alcohol. There was another case of this back in the 1700s where a guy outside of a church, this was in France, caught on fire. And they thought it was the sign of the devil. So the people, when they saw the fire, they would report a fire outside the church. They ran out of the church. They saw the man on fire. They put the fire out. And then when they realized that the guy, that the fire was coming from the guy, then they beat the guy to death and killed him. Sometimes you can't win for losing. You know what I'm saying, don't you? Okay. But this is a true story in Serbia. Now, we know of 200 cases. What is the real number? It could be 400, 800, 1,000. We don't know. Because in a lot of these cases, if you're the fire marshal, you're not going to write down some crazy stuff you might get fired over. You're going to say, well, maybe he did this or maybe he did that. Or you're just going to come up with something. But it doesn't explain the skeptics or the believers to this day with all the science we have. We have no explanation. And this guy who was sleeping, when they woke him up, he had no idea he was on fire. And this is what happens in a lot of these cases. The people started smoking and then they catch fire and the person don't even realize they're on fire. I have nothing to say on this. I'm speechless. But I can give you one or two more cases. Let me see. Let me see if I can find you another good case. There was one scientist that was thinking that they were saying obesity and electrostatic electricity is causing this. I don't know how are you rubbing your, are you sitting in the chair watching TV and you're rubbing your legs together? How is static electricity going to do that? Obesity, a lot of these people was not fat. Some of them are. Okay. Now, your body, there's been some people believe that, there are 3 flammable parts of your body. Your fat tissue, and plus, depending on what you've been drinking or eating, and plus, we also produce methane gas. That's the reason why some people pass gas. You understand what I'm saying? And maybe if you got a lot of, I guess if you're super constipated and the gas is building up inside of you, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I'm just not touching that. Okay. Here's another story of, let me see. Okay, this was a story that was in Ireland. Okay, somebody reported a fire at a home. When the firemen got there, they discovered a burnt corpse, and the corpse was almost reduced to coal. The problem is this was a corpse of a 76-year-old lady. The body was almost completely burned. She was sitting in a chair next to the fireplace. The fire in the fireplace was still burning. The room suffered very little damage. And all of the furniture, the chair she was sitting in was burnt. But the rest of the room suffered very little damage. And this was in the cold, in the winter. It wasn't in the summer. This is why she was sitting in front of the fireplace. The reason I put a picture of the hand in here because we all heard of Thor. I mean, the Fantastic Four and the guy, the Flame, and whatever. Or do we have this inside of us? Because there are, which I talked about before, these monks in India. They take their thin robes and they climb all the way to the top of the mountain in the winter. They wear their sandals and their little thin robes and they meditate all night and they don't get frostbite. And scientists have went with them and put all kind of measurements on them and whatever, and their body temperatures do not drop. They saying that this is not magic or anything like that, but the monks are able to control their body temperature. Maybe some people's body temperature is totally out of control. And I remember a few years ago when I used to weigh 30, 40 pounds heavier than what I am now. In the summer, I used to be sweating like a pig. And I would be so, so hot. I felt like I was on fire on the inside. And I would just be drinking all the time. And I was not drinking good stuff. I was drinking a lot of Mountain Dew and a lot of soda. That's probably what made me so big. Okay. I don't have that problem anymore. But I would just feel like I was on fire on the inside. I would be so, so hot. And even when I would get in the air conditioner, I could turn it on full blast and it would take 20, 30 minutes for me to cool off with the super cold air blowing on me. I would be that hot. I felt like I was burning up. Maybe I could have burned up. Is there something we can do? Is there see, we know nothing about this. Science still doesn't truly accept this. They say there is a cause, they just haven't figured it out yet. Scientists will tell you that spontaneous human combustion doesn't truly exist. This is an urban legend. But when the firemen come across these cases, they cannot find a source or people smoking or things like that, or the time that the lady underwear caught on fire. This is very scary stuff. So the only thing I can say is if you suffer from the way I was suffering, I guess I could have got so hot back in those days when I was just feeling like I was a furnace. And if I was already burning up, and if I would have been drinking or two, and if maybe I was just like a rainforest waiting to just go up. I don't have anything. Okay. But not everyone is talking about how hot they were. Like the guy who was driving to work. He saw smoke in the car. He thought the car had a problem. He pulled over to the side of the road to see where the smoke was coming, or maybe he had an oil leak, or maybe it was a fuel leak or something. And when he got out of the car, it was him that was on fire. He was smoking. He never actually fully ignited, but he was smoking and he ripped off all of his clothes and the smoke was coming from him. And he doused himself with water and everything, and people tried to help him. And he suffered burns on his arm and on his torso. The purpose of these talks is to let you know, even in 2021, we try to pretend like we know everything. We are so damn smart. There's nothing we don't know. There's a hell of a lot of stuff that we still don't know even today. So, the only thing I can say is if you are one of these people that you start feeling super hot like I used to, uh, you just need to make sure. Uh, I can't really say. But now that I lost weight and everything, I guess my blood pressure and things went down. Even when I live in Texas near the Mexican border, and damn, it's hot. Okay, but I'm not sweating like a pig anymore. I don't feel like I'm just going to burn up anymore. I don't drink Mountain Dew and eat all the junk I used to eat anymore. I straighten up my diet. Okay. What would have happened if I didn't? Maybe I wouldn't have ignited. Maybe I just would have just fell over a heart attack or whatever. See, this is what we need to figure out. We need to fix these problems. And we need to do what we got to do, and we need to acknowledge there are some things in the world that we still don't understand. Science don't want to go there because today we want to pretend like there's nothing we don't know. Unfortunately, there is so much we don't know. And just like this lady in the hospital here, if that was you and your hands went up and you caught fire and you was burning, what would you do? What would you do? We're going into the month of October. We're going to be talking about some very weird and scary stuff going into Halloween. This stuff is meant to scare you a little bit, to make you scratch your head a little bit, but not to freak you out too much. But just remember, there's a lot of things which is still unknown in the world. Okay. And don't believe that, just because we can't explain it, that it's a myth or it's a legend. Why I believe in things like this is because I said this has been documented ever since 1740. And there's been documented cases. Even today, they're still documenting cases. And how many cases are not documented? I'm Lynn David Lipsey, your full spectrum Gnostic. I hope you enjoyed this show. Share it with your friends. And we're going to have another scary show this Tuesday. I want to thank you for listening. And you can find me on Facebook, on the Spirit Room Network, and YouTube. I'm everywhere. Thank you. I want you to have a nice week. I hope to see you later. Bye.